The world is watching closely as the United States continues to act with very little regard for international law. From economic pressure on Venezuela to military posturing in other regions, it is becoming clear that other nations are concerned about how far the US will go without any accountability. Citizens around the world are starting to question the stability of the global system. So in the US, midterms and other elections are approaching right now, right? And the way the government handles foreign affairs is a key topic for voters. If leaders continue to bypass rules and international agreements, it will affect not only the US credibility abroad, but also the decisions of other governments that have to respond to this behavior. World leaders are now faced with the question of how to preserve their own national interests while dealing with a superpower that often prioritizes unilateral action over cooperation. In countries across Asia and Africa, governments are particularly aware of the shifting balance of power. Historically, dominance by a single nation has created instability and inequality. Many nations in these regions have experienced direct and indirect influence from powerful countries over decades. They know that when one country ignores rules and imposes its will, the result is often exploitation and economic disruption. African nations, for example, have seen foreign control over their resources, trade, and governance structures repeatedly over the last century alone. They are determined not to allow the same patterns to repeat. The US continues to act as though international law is optional. It risks eroding the trust that underpins global cooperation. Other countries are observing, they're assessing, and preparing to protect themselves from similar exploitation. The United Nations is supposed to be the system that enforces international law and holds countries accountable. Yet, when violations occur, the UN usually issues statements of concern or compiles reports, and the action stops there. The effectiveness of these measures is increasingly questioned. If the US can continue to attack or pressure countries without any consequences, it sends a signal that international norms are weak. The world order depends on agreements being meaningful. Countries that have a history of being affected by foreign intervention are asking whether the UN will step up or continue to compile reports that don't really change the reality on the ground. This uncertainty puts additional pressure on governments everywhere to develop strategies to safeguard their sovereignty and stability without relying on empty statements or delayed action from global institutions. The upcoming elections in many countries, including South Africa, reflect these concerns. Citizens are aware that foreign interference, economic pressure, and international conflicts can directly affect their domestic stability. Political parties and leaders are under pressure to prioritize national sovereignty, fair trade, and independent decision making. If the US continues to act outside of established rules, voters are likely to demand governments that are prepared to push back against unilateral dominance. This can lead to stronger regional alliances, revised trade policies, and foreign policy positions. The world is entering a period where governance will not be measured by only domestic performance, but by the ability to navigate global power dynamics and protect the rights and interests of the nation in the face of international overreach. Africa, in particular, is focused on ensuring that foreign influence does not undermine its future. While South Africa continues to develop economically and politically, the presence of external powers attempting to control infrastructure, data, or resources is a constant concern. Even seemingly neutral projects like global communications networks can carry hidden influence that shifts power away from the local government. Countries in the region are determined to establish their own frameworks, set boundaries, and avoid repeating historical patterns of exploitation. Watching the US behave without consequences reinforces the need for Africa to take proactive measures to protect its sovereignty, to manage its resources independently, and coordinate with other nations to preserve regional stability. The situation in Asia mirrors this approach. Nations in this region are adjusting policies, they are adjusting their trade agreements and alliances to ensure that no single power can dominate critical sectors or influence their decision making without any accountability. The US has long been seen as a primary actor in global security and finance, but if its behavior continues unchecked, countries are preparing to act independently. This may include revising access to critical technologies, limiting dependence on US based financial systems, and developing regional solutions to maintain economic resilience. The broader message is clear. Countries will respond to ensure that global power is balanced and that no nation can impose rules unilaterally. The combination of these factors demonstrates that the world is no longer willing to remain passive. The US may assume that economic or military dominance guarantees compliance, but nations across Africa, Asia, and beyond are increasingly coordinating to protect their interests. They are ready to enforce their sovereignty through trade policies, diplomatic engagement, and strategic alliances. If international law continues to be ignored, the legitimacy of global institutions will weaken and the repercussions will ripple through economies, governance structures, and regional stability. At the end of the day, the question remains for the US. Will it respect international law and cooperate with other nations, or will it continue unilateral actions that risk destabilizing the world order? More importantly, how will the rest of the world respond if no meaningful accountability is enforced? The choices made right now will define governance and international relations for decades to come.